All right, I am back with another build, and today we are doing a build request. Now, this is going to be a bit of a strange one. I was asked to make an unarmed fighter that does not take monk levels. The person who requested this basically asked for a pugilist, pit fighter, street brawler type character, and I was happy to provide because, I mean, if you've built I'm theory crafted and made a bunch of builds for this game, you know probably where I'm going to go with this, but I feel like I've got a way of doing it that's going to really kind of, be really interesting, and it's going to create a really unique way of approaching the game, as there's going to be extra stuff you're going to need to manage that you would not normally need to. But let's get into the build. We're going to be playing as a fighter to start, giving us a fighting style, which we can't use. I am not wearing armor with this build, I am going with clothing, so defense is useless, even though I would probably take it anyway just in case you do decide to use armor, and protection can work if you wear a shield, but I'm not, so it's also kind of useless for me, but you can choose to use a shield if you want. And since all of the other fighting styles require weapons, well, none of them work, so there's no point in taking any of them. We might as well just grab defense in case we decide to wear armor and move on. Now, as for our stats, we have a 16 in Dexterity, a 16 in Constitution, a 14 in Wisdom, and a 12 in Charisma. I've dumped Intelligence because we don't need it. And with Strength, which is going to be our primary attacking stat, we're going to be using the Potions of Hill and Cloud Giant Strength. Now, this is breaking a long-standing rule on the channel where I kind of say, hey, I don't like using elixirs and such, like temporary items like that, because I want the builds, at least stat-wise, to be able to stand on their own. However, I am breaking this rule today for one time only to create what I believe is to be a really unique build. So I say this character is a bit of a, well, he is a pit fighter and an arena brawler and all that such, taking part in illegal kind of like gambling rings and like fighting rings underneath Baldur's Gate. And he is not playing fairly. He is a cheater. He is basically using fantasy steroids to win his fights, that being our two potions. When he is on these potions, he is cocky, arrogant, and sees himself above others, and is extremely violent and cannot hold back, meaning that he has absolutely killed people in the ring before. And then when he's not on his drugs, he is weak, irrational, extremely irritable, and is constantly scrambling for his next fix. And this is going to be reflected both in the way you can roleplay the character and how you are actually going to play the character throughout the game. Because when this guy was kidnapped by the Nautiloid, he lost his access to his supply of potions, meaning that as you play through the game, you're going to have to either scramble up the alchemy ingredients needed to create more, or you're going to have to scrounge up the money to be able to buy them from shops consistently in order to keep up your strength. So you have this ever-prevalent side quest throughout the entire game, which I think is super, super fun and makes for a really interesting character. Let's keep going. Next up at Fighter Level 2, we're going to be grabbing Action Surge, allowing us to get that violent beatdown I was talking about once per short rest, allowing you to gain an extra action to keep up the punches. At Fighter Level 3, we're going to be able to choose our subclass, and, well, we don't have really good options here. Battlemaster would seem like an obvious choice to be able to get the weapon maneuvers, right? Well, unfortunately, they don't work with unarmed strikes, with the exception of Commander Strike, Evasive Footwork, and Rally. All of these require weapons, so it's not really worth it. So what about Champion then, getting that buff to our critical hits? Well, we can't roll critical hits with our unarmed strikes without Monk, because since our damage is fixed because unarmed strikes on their own are just 1 plus your strength modifier, getting a critical hit would not improve the damage. Now granted, if we manage to get this unarmed damage really high, that means we're constantly hitting for high damage with no variable, which is a bonus, but critical hits are kind of useless to us, so Champion doesn't really work either, as all it would get us otherwise is things like Remarkable Athlete to give us higher jumps, and another fighting style that we can't use. So that leaves us with Eldritch Knight, which is going to give us way more than you would think. Let's get into our cantrips. First of all, friends. For our kind of deceiving, intimidating angle, this works quite well. And your second cantrip can be whatever you like. Pick something utility-based though, because we did dump intelligence. I would say Blade Ward is going to be a good shout, because it's going to give you that little bit of resistance if you need it. As for our spells, we have 2 utility options that we're going to need to grab. Mage Armour, because we're wearing clothing, so we get unarmored defense, and Shield, to be able to use our reaction to increase our armor class, making us even more tanky. And as for our expanded spell list choice, we might as well just grab Longstrider for that extra movement speed. Next up at level 4, we're going to be able to grab another spell, and take whatever you like here, it really doesn't matter. I would just grab maybe Protection from Evil and Good to protect an ally against attacks from like aberrations, celestials, elementals, fae, fiends, and undead. Basically meaning that you cannot be charmed or frightened or possessed by them, and the attacks against you have disadvantage. Pretty good. And as for our feat, you saw this coming. We're grabbing Tavern Brawler, and we can bump up our Constitution, and I would also use Ethel's Boon to round out this odd number, so make sure you pick that up. But Tavern Brawler is going to allow us to make unarmed attacks, use improvised weapons, and throw things, with our strength modifier added twice to the attack and damage rolls, meaning our unarmed strikes just got a lot more powerful. This feat is required for this build, and it just makes sense overall. Next up at fighter level 5, we're going to be getting extra attack, meaning we can now punch 2 times per turn. Really good. Next up at fighter level 6, we're going to be grabbing our bonus feat, meaning that we can take an ability score improvement and bump up our dexterity to 18. And again, if we have Ethel's Boon, our constitution would be at 18 as well, giving us some high rounded out stats made for combat. Dexterity is going to be helping us out with our AC and our initiative, which is super good. But there's also a ton of other feat options you could go with, such as athlete, mobile, lucky, even things like tough, or perhaps even... Actually, to be honest, that's pretty much it. You could even actually go with Martial Adept if you wanted like a one-time use of evasive footwork or something like that, but I personally would not recommend that. But I feel like just taking this ability score improvement, or heck, even alert maybe, will absolutely help. At fighter level 7, we're going to be getting nothing that really helps us. I mean, War Magic is interesting, but it's basically like after we cast a cantrip, you can make a weapon attack as a bonus action. So if you wanted to cast Blade Ward, you're technically not losing an attack, but it's meh at best. We also are going to get access to level 2 spells at this point, and I can't really decide on anything that I particularly like here. But I'm going to go with Darkness and Gust of Wind for now. Darkness could be like you basically pulling out like a smoke bomb or some sort of other way to blind your opponents. It's kind of a cheap move, so that could work. And also Gust of Wind, allowing us to kind of push enemies and throw them off balance, but honestly, these spells are all going to be kind of useless to us. I didn't really want to focus on spells for this build, so these are just kind of here. Next up, we are going to be able to grab another feat, and I want to bump up our ability score, and I want to grab another bump to our dex to put it up to 20, so we have the highest AC we can get. Also, from our expanded spell list, we get to choose a spell, and this is where some more useful options come up, and I am specifically going to recommend Enlarge Reduce. This will allow you to make yourself larger, which will increase your unarmed strike damage by a significant amount. Definitely worth picking this up. But if you don't really like that idea, if you want to play more of a kind of realistic fighter that's not somebody who really uses magic, Mirror Image, well, kind of works, I guess. Like maybe you're just dodging really fast or something like that. I don't know. Take Enlarge Reduce. It's one of the better options you can get. In fact, I would actually probably replace one of our lower level spells at this point as well. Something like Protection from Evil and Good could be swapped out for Mirror Image. I quite like that. And at level 5, we're going to be able to get, level 9, we're going to be able to get Indomitable whenever we fail a saving throw. You can roll again, using the new result instead. Just a generally good overall feature to have. At fighter level 10, we're going to be getting another subclass feature, which is Eldritch Strike. Whenever you hit a creature with a weapon attack, which we're not doing, because again, unarmed strikes do not count as weapon attacks, it has disadvantage on its next saving throw against a spell you cast before the end of your next turn. Again, kind of useless for us, but I figured I'd just read it, because I don't think I ever have in a video before. As for our cantrips, we do get to pick another one, and... memes. Technically, we could use this feature to cast True Strike as an action and get advantage on our bonus action attack roll. it kind of works. Not that advantage is as important for this build, but hey-ho. And again, we get another leveled spell. Let's take Shatter, I guess, because it could be kind of like a Hulk thunderclap type deal, I guess. But again, it's a con save, so it's not going to do that much damage. Just stick to your punches. At Fighter level 11, we're going to get what I really, really wanted to get here, that being our second extra attack, allowing us to punch 3 times per turn, which is going to be super important for this build. I mean, you could probably do some other things, like to kind of, you know, you could throw in, like, maybe, like, some Barbarian levels if you want Rage, although that doesn't add damage to your unarmed strikes, which sucks. You could go for maybe some other utility options, like Sorcerer, maybe, or even Druid or something, but I just kind of wanted to go a strict Fighter here, because, again, if we want to kind of stay with that, like, realistic, grounded kind of Pit Fighter angle, at least to the best that we can, I wanted to kind of go with just a pure Fighter here for those 3 attacks to go crazy. And also, we get another spell at this level. Take whatever you like. Thunderwave. Now, at level 12, you do have an option. You can just stay here at level 12 and grab a feat, which would allow you to bump up your stats even more, which is what I'm personally going to do. However, if you wanted to take a quick dip into Cleric to get the War Domain for 3 extra bonus action attacks per long rest, you absolutely could. But I'm personally not going to be going with that. I just want to go to level 12 of Fighter for that extra feat. And again, this can be whatever you like, but I'm just going to bump up that Constitution for a 20 total of Ethel's Boon, so that we have a ton of Dex and a ton of HP. And that is the build. Overall, you're going to be getting a ton of damage with your unarmed strikes, being able to attack a lot of times in a single turn. You're going to have very, very decent armor class with mage armor and the equipment that I'll be going over in a minute, and you do have some kind of extra utility options here, like friends to be able to keep up your deception, enlarge reduce to be able to make yourself bigger and efficient and deal more damage, and things like mirror image to give yourself more AC as well, and second wind and such. I mean, you are going to get some decent stuff out of your utility options here, but we're mainly here for the equipment. That is how we're going to make this strategy really work. So, let's get into it. First up, we have the Horns of the Berserker. You gain a +2 bonus to attack rolls when attacking creatures that have already taken damage. Awesome. Your unarmed and melee attacks deal an additional 2 necrotic damage as long as you don't have your full health. If you don't deal any damage this turn, you take 1 to 4 necrotic damage. So, you're just going to get a base flat +2 damage bonus to your unarmed strikes, which is awesome. However, you can only get this in Act 3, so in the meantime you could use the Scabby Pugilist Circlet, which, while threatened, or surrounded by 2 or more enemies I should say, you just gain a flat 2 damage to your unarmed strikes, which is awesome. You can get this really early and will be pretty good until you get the Horns of the Berserker. Since we're using camp clothing here, I've just gone with the Cloak of Protection for a buff to our AC. Works out pretty nicely. And then here's my favourite piece of armour, the Vest of Soul Rejuvenation. You can get this as soon as you start Act 3, and whenever the wearer succeeds a saving throw on a spell, they regain 1d4 hit points. Nice. And then also, the wearer can use a reaction to make an unarmed strike against any attacker that misses. This is literally close quarters combat, street brawl, boxing, dodge an attack, and then immediately counter hit with a right hook or an uppercut or something like that. It felt way too cool to not include here, which is why mage armor is awesome for this build. Definitely want to pick this up. And obviously it gets us a +2 to our armor class as well, which is awesome. But obviously this is an Act 3 option, so in the meantime, pick up something like the Enraging Heart Garb to give you a buff to your Constitution until you're able to grab this. Now next up, your gloves, and you have a ton of options for this. My personal favourite here is the Servitor of the Black Hand, which gives your unarmed attacks an additional bit of force damage, but also lets you cast Fear, which makes sense because if you're this roided out raging guy who's totally fucking insane, people are probably going to be a bit scared of you, but this is an Act 3 option unfortunately, so I do have some other options for you. Early on into Act 2, you can get the Gloves of Crushing. The wearer gains a +1 bonus to unarmed attack rolls, and the unarmed attacks deal an additional 2 bludgeoning damage. It's just more flat damage to add on. We also have the Gloves of Uninhibited Kashigo. This is an Act 1 option. The wearer deals an additional 1d4 damage with throw attacks and attacks made with improvised weapons. So if you wanted to be able to use those attacks, this will help you deal extra damage, so it's definitely worth picking up in Act 1, and then maybe upgrading to the other ones as you go. And then if you're kind of deep into Act 3 and want a super powerful option, go for the Hell Dusk Gloves. Your unarmed attacks get an additional 1d6 necrotic damage and can possibly inflict bleeding, which is huge. Definitely the most powerful option you can go with, and while you can get it as soon as you start Act 3, you do have to fight a mini-boss, which could be probably a little bit more difficult on Tactician or something like that, but it's still possible to get these quite early on. And finally, our boots are going to be the Boots of Uninhibited Kushigo. The wearer deals additional damage equal to their Wisdom modifier with unarmed strikes. That's why, despite the fact that we're not a monk, I did want to get a little bit of Wisdom. This is going to just add a flat +2 damage bonus to our attacks, which is nice. But again, this is an Act 3 option, so I've included the Boots of Speed as an Act 1 alternative, which will allow you to dash as a bonus action to help you be a bit more maneuverable. But definitely this kind of final combination of items is really going to bump up your damage, giving us a grand total of 22 to 27 damage with our unarmed strikes without monk levels. That is powerful. That is a flat 19 damage already, with a +2 necrotic from our helmet and a +1d6 necrotic from our gloves. But if you went with some of the weaker early game options, you're not going to be you're going to lose out on a bit, but you're still going to have very solid damage, that being 19. If you have the Potion of Cloud Giant Strength, but let's go with the Elixir of Hill Giant Strength for a second, because that's probably what you're more likely to have in the early game, which would give you 13, but then again, you could bump up with something like the, like, get these gloves on, and then, you know, have a bit more damage there. Basically, you're going to have to just kind of play around with it and, you know, see how you can get the most damage in any given moment, but you are going to have solid damage throughout the game as you go through, as long as you pick up the appropriate equipment. But let's just stick the more powerful stuff back on, and you can see, like, yeah, it just goes up quite exponentially. And then we'll drink our main potion again to give us that big damage number. But I'm not done yet. We also have the Amulet of Branding, allowing us to brand the weak, which means for 3 turns we can make an enemy vulnerable to bludgeoning damage, meaning that it will deal double damage. Now, unfortunately, this will not work on enemies that are already resistant or immune to bludgeoning damage, but if they're not, you can get that double damage off and deal a ton of damage, because again, with our action surge and all that, we're going to be able to attack a lot of times, getting the most out of those 3 turns. And also to supplement this, we have the Darkfire Shortbow, allowing us to cast haste on ourselves once per long rest, meaning that we're going to get even more attacks. So these 3 turns are going to be very, very, very good, because you're just going to be attacking over and over and over again. And I feel like combining these 2 items, getting haste and brand the weak, really makes sense for a one-on-one fighter type character, because again, if this is a guy who is kind of a street fighter and fights one-on-one, it makes sense for him to be a bit of a boss beater, being able to stare down the most powerful opponent and absolutely rip them to shreds with punch after punch after punch that deals tons of damage. We also have the Ring of Flinging here, if you want to go for that throwing an unarmed weapon kind of fighting style. This will give you that extra bit of damage. And finally, we have the Ring of Free Action, which allows you to ignore the effects of difficult terrain and cannot be paralyzed or restrained, because nothing will stop your Roid Rage. Now, that is the build as far as the equipment is concerned, but we're not quite done yet. Because, and I will just quickly show off the enlarged damage before I forget. So yeah, you do get a big chunk of extra damage, so it's worth picking up. You get an extra 1d4. But there is one extra thing that I haven't actually got into yet. So all of this is well and good, but again, this build lives or dies by the fact that you need potions. So how do we get a ton of them? Well, we are a drug addict, which means we must have a dealer. Meet your dealer, Sir Fuzzlewump. Now, Sir Fuzzlewump is a wizard hireling, and I will add him to my party just so you can briefly see what he is about. Now, I can't say I can take credit. I can't take credit for this idea, because this was actually pointed out to me by someone in the comments that you can actually do this. Let's have a quick look. I have made Sir Fuzzlewump a level 6 transmutation wizard with a dip into rogue. This means we're going to be able to get experimental alchemy, allowing us to brew 2 alchemical solutions instead of 1 when combining extracts, meaning that every time we go to make a cloud giant potion, we can make 2 instead of 1. However, in order to do this, we need to succeed a DC 15 medicine check. Well, I've bumped Fuzzlewump's wisdom as high as it will go at this level, that being a 19, giving him a big bump to his medicine score, a plus 10 total, because we've gone for expertise with that rogue dip, meaning he is going to have a very high chance to be able to get us that extra potion if we hand him the ingredients. So that basically means that once you've gathered up your ingredients, bring them to Fuzzlewump, and he will be able to make you those potions that you want. But if you take him up to level 6, you can also get him to do something a little bit extra, like making a transmuter stone. Basically allowing him to create a special stone that will last once per long rest, that just gets placed into a character's inventory and gives them a buff. And he does not have to be in your party for this buff to take place. He just has to give it to you and place it into your inventory. Then you can dismiss him and it will remain. If I dismiss him now, as Larry Punchy Fist here, you can see I still have Fuzzlewump's Transmuter Stone in my inventory, which increases my movement speed by 3 meters permanently, allowing us to get even more movement speed, which is awesome. So yeah, setting up this character, make sure you do at least get somebody who has the Transmuter kind of wizard thing, whether you get a hireling or maybe just use Gale if you don't plan on having Gale in your party, but I think it's quite nice to just have a hireling so you're not affecting like the main NPCs of the game. So yeah, that is the build, and I'll tell you what, this video was cursed. I think I've recorded this video like 7 or 8 times. Those first like 7 were because as I was leveling up the build, like this was a totally different build. I had actually made this a Transmuter Wizard Barbarian build at the start, and then kind of realized actually it kind of sucked. So then I moved up to making a fighter build and then making the second character to go with it, and then realizing, and then I actually was a battle master fighter to start. Then I realized that the weapon attacks didn't work, the maneuvers didn't work without weapons, so I had to redo it. And then I realized that champion didn't matter because we didn't need critical, so I had to redo it. So then I used Eldritch Knight after that, and then realized that I didn't need to take the dip in Barbarian that I was using because we could grab Mage Armour, and oh my god, it was a nightmare. And then when I finally sat down for like half an hour and got a good full recording of a build I was happy with, I realized my mic was muted the entire goddamn time, and it is currently 10 past 10 at night. And when I put up my little community post saying, hey, no video tonight due to technical difficulties, it wasn't technical difficulties, it was my stupidity. So the whole reason that you didn't get a video yesterday is because of I'm a friggin' idiot. But anyways, not really many housekeeping items really to take care of, but I am going to point out something that's going on this weekend. I currently have a poll running on the channel. If you didn't know about it, please go check it out, because you guys are basically voting on a special kind of thing that we're going to do this weekend. It's either going to be a live stream where I'm going to be live streaming a playthrough of a special build that I am calling the Blue Mage build, where I play a wizard that can only use spells that he has seen an enemy use first. So that is going to be that could be really fun. But the other option is for me to do a modded build that uses the level 20 mod, allowing me to kind of show you guys, you know, what we could do with a build if we weren't limited to 12 levels and we had something a bit closer to standard 5e. So feel free to go vote on that on the poll on the community tab of the channel. At the moment, the Blue Mage build is winning, and I am kind of leaning more towards that because I think that could be a super fun thing to do as a live stream that I might potentially edit down into a video afterwards, like if I decide it's good enough, but it might just stay up as like a VOD on the channel that you guys can go watch. And I've never really properly live streamed before, so I'm curious to see how it goes. But anyways, I am very, very tired, so that is going to do it for me. Again, sorry for no build video yesterday. Hopefully there will be another one on Thursday. Well, I guess tomorrow is Thursday. So on Friday, it'll be my deity build, and then on Saturday or Sunday, depending, we will see where this whole live stream potential thing goes. I'm quite looking forward to giving it a shout, so I hope to see you guys there. Anyways, again, like I said, this is going to do it for me. I will see you all next time. I am going to fucking bed.